Ladies and gentlemen, my name is J-Cal, and this is the PreParty for Alliance-Wrestling.com, your number one source for news and information for the National Wrestling Alliance. Now, I apologize because there's no cool waiting music. There was no cool intro or cool video. That's because, well, I take ownership on that one, my friends. Your boy forgot to charge his battery. Pure and simple, I effed up. You can start the double clap if you want. Yeah, I'm kind of bummed out. The new rig, the new system is on its way. There will be a better days ahead of us, but sometimes you have to take a step backwards to take a step forwards. And your boy J-Cal is definitely taking a step backwards today, because we're going on the Chromebook, baby. This is primitive. Look at that 720 pixels, man. I feel like I'm in only half high def. Like I'm high. Not deaf at all. Anyways, this is it, guys. This is the Alliance. I'm trying to steal Gary's stuff, man. I better stop. So, I'll be honest with you guys. Today has been pretty rough. Full disclosure, because I talk to you guys like you're my friends, not just people who watch me on YouTube, but I talk to you guys like my friends. My wife had gallbladder surgery yesterday. And so today, I've spent most of the day taking care of her, taking care of the kids, and the time that I used to have to prep the show, get the all cool stuff going on, well, I just didn't have time for it today. As always, we're also streaming on Instagram Live. But if you guys have the ability to, I'd prefer you to be watching here on YouTube, because you'll get the full show here. And unfortunately, Instagram, we cut off at about 30 minutes into it. All Japan Stan says, "Oh, Jay, looking good in HD, brother. This is awful. I feel so bad right now. But the sun will come out tomorrow. And I'm really excited about the tech that's coming, because if you saw the computer that I've been running this podcast on for the last 8 months, it really was activity. Well, that's great. Even better. A good friend over at the Game Crossing, that's an esports academy for those of you with younger children, teenage children who are into gaming. They really have a cool setup where they are teaching kids not only how to build computers, but how to build their own OBS studio and get on streaming and stuff. So I have a much greater machine coming to my home soon. It's just not here yet. Wrestling with MMA, yeah, I mean, I think my wife will be fine. She is really one of the toughest human beings you'll ever meet. She a couple months ago, she had some issues with her gallbladder. We spent a couple hours at the emergency room, realized that there was a problem, and we weren't expecting to have an opportunity to have this surgery until maybe August or September, because of COVID and everything that's going on right now. But fortunately, they were able to see her sooner, which she's in pain right now. It sucks, but long term, this is going to be much better for her. I mean, she has to change her diet, sure, and all that stuff, but she'll feel a lot better eventually. Yeah, Jeff, and thank you for joining us here on YouTube, Jeff. I appreciate that. Yeah, she's a fighter. My wife is incredibly strong, and she's recuperating. And I'll be honest, I'm babying her more than she probably needs me to. But you know, that's what you do when you care about people. You try to take care of them. So with that being said, that the NWA, man, what a crazy week we've had, right? I mean, it was less than 7 days ago Eddie Kingston appeared on AEW's Dynamite to challenge Cody Rhodes for that TNT Championship. Now, thanks, Ron. I appreciate that. Now, it's crazy about Eddie Kingston is that this whole time I was under the impression that he was an NWA guy. Meaning, I thought he was signed to a contract. I thought he was part of that upper echelon of talent that the NWA has that is under contract, and it's kind of shocking and a little bit odd to find out that he isn't. So Eddie Kingston has the ability to go anywhere and wrestle anyone, wherever, whenever, however, whoever, anytime. Which, I mean, when you think about the model that NWA Power and those pay-per-views had, you're really only having to give up about 3 days a month to be on that payroll. And somebody like Eddie Kingston, who brings so much value to the plate, I'm kind of surprised he wasn't signed. And if AEW doesn't sign Eddie Kingston, which would be a huge mistake as far as I'm concerned, I hope the NWA takes a leap and signs the Mad King, because the best way I can explain it is the energy that Eddie Kingston brought to the table on AEW was very reminiscent of the All In show. It was very reminiscent of Nick Aldis and Cody Rhodes. Now, I'm not saying Nick Aldis is Eddie Kingston and vice versa, but that energy, that shock value of him walking out, I know it wasn't a surprise when Nick Aldis showed up at All In, but when Cody Rhodes challenged him for the belt, I mean, that got a lot of people to pay attention. And Eddie Kingston really opened up a lot of eyes on AEW. And there was more than just hashtag NWA fam rooting for Eddie to get signed. It was more than just us, guys. It was the AEW universe. I don't know what they call their fan base, but there was palpable energy. There were people want more of Eddie Kingston. And if NWA was smart, if Billy Corgan, I know he doesn't watch this podcast, but if you're listening, if someone relays this to Billy, man, you need to sign Eddie Kingston. He needs to be one of your impact players, pardon the pun. And I really genuinely believe that Eddie Kingston is going to sell tickets when this all returns back to some normalcy. Some of your comments, I'll just go ahead and start reading them. Wrestling with MMA said Eddie killed it on AEW. Wrestling with MMA say Ricky Starks has been as well. Absolutely, both those guys, right? And that's the thing. I don't want to say the NWA is squandering anybody, because I really think the NWA has tried their best to be the adult in the room and take care of its talent as well as its fans by not introducing some sort of closed set wrestling. But I also think that's going to hinder them going forward. And I think the longer that this persists, this being COVID-19, this being a global pandemic, I think at some point the NWA has to change gears and do something different. So I really do think that we're going to see something soon, and I surely hope that Eddie Kingston's involved. I'm getting caught up reading your comments. Two things stand out in this moment in the show. Kingston was awesome on Dynamite. Jake Howe's wearing an Angels hat at a point where Halos are actively playing again. All is well. You damn right, Jeff. Damn right. We are starting to see, and look, there's going to be hiccups along the way. If you guys are fans of baseball, you know what's happened with the Marlins and the Phillies, and now teams are like, well, we don't maybe want to play in Miami because of the outbreak of the pandemic of the COVID-19, and the Phillies players had to be tested because they shared the same field with the Miami Marlins. But there are going to be bumps in the road to getting back to normalcy. but we'll get there. We're gonna get there. It's just gonna take time, and maybe things will be different when we're there. Maybe our lives will be different, but we aren't stopping. Just like the NWA isn't stopping, and that's going back to what people are still doubting that the NWA is going to return. And that blows my mind, guys. It absolutely blows my mind. We're talking about an organization that's been around since 1948, 72 years. I mean, shortly after World War II, the NWA was formed. Okay? The last time there was a global pandemic, there was no NWA. So, I don't know. I really think things will get better, but they might get worse before they get better. But getting back to Eddie Kingston, and Dave Scooby said it best right there. Eddie has that real feel. Nothing gimmick about him at all. No. Jeff Johnson on our Instagram page said he loves Eddie Kingston. He's the best promo in the business today, in my opinion. That's hard to dispute. The guy... Johnny Valentine once said, I can't convince you that wrestling is real, but I can convince you that I am. And that, to me, epitomizes what Eddie Kingston does. When he's telling Arn Anderson that he swears on his mom's beautiful eyes that he'll gouge out Arn Anderson's. I mean, I didn't really think he'd go gouging out Arn Anderson's eyes. But part of me thought it might happen. Part of me thought he might go after Arn. And wouldn't that have made for some exciting television if you literally have Ring Crew and Cody trying to pull Eddie Kingston off of Arn Anderson, who's literally trying to put a thumb in his eye? Am I the only one that would pop like crazy for that? Wrestling does need an influx of realism. Sometimes it's hard to get beyond the whole idea that wrestling is... We know this is a show, guys. We know it's a show, but we want to have some reality-based wrestling when we're doing our best to, legitimize what they're doing. So Eddie Kingston, holy crap. I don't know if the world is his oyster, but it damn should be. It damn well should be. That guy is great. Speaking about Nick Aldis, because we did bring him up a few times, did you guys hear the clapback that he gave to Bruce Pritchard? Now, this is the part in the show where if my rig was working, if my computer was working the way it should be, and my setup was working, this is where I'd play the audio of Nick Aldis clapping back. And it basically saying that that Bruce Pritchard's out of touch with the world of wrestling. That he has no idea what he's talking about. And it's hard to disagree with that. It really is, because if anyone who knows anything about professional wrestling wants to call Nick Aldis fake or anything but authentic, you're crazy. You're crazy. Nick Aldis is probably the best man to carry that belt since this man. And for you guys who can't see him on Instagram, that would be Scrap Iron Adam Pearce. So, Bruce Pritchard, who again I don't think is in touch with reality at all, it kind of is showing how tone deaf the WWE has been. I mean, making judgments about wrestlers that he's not even really watching, while their own product seems to be dwindling in ratings and interest, and people seem to be carrying less and less. I mean, that energy, Bruce, maybe you should be applying that to your roster. Maybe you should get familiar with the guys that are on that roster that can make your show better. I don't need to stick up for Nick Aldis. He did a perfectly good job for himself. If you guys haven't heard it, it's the Busted Open Radio. I think that's the name of the show. Check that audio out, because Nick does a great job of not only defending himself and what he's accomplished, but kind of going up for the NWA. And of course, in a world where everyone seems to forget how exciting the National Wrestling Alliance was just 6 months ago. It was good to see that influx. And the other good thing to see about the NWA is they're trying to get out there more. Now, I was surprised that the town hall meeting they had last week only had 65 views on it. Now, I guess I'm part of the problem because I hadn't had a chance to watch it yet either, but we're talking about a show that was routinely bringing in hundreds of thousands of views with NWA Power, and even Carneyland had thousands of people watching it. 65 is quite the decline. So, I mean, the NWA has to act soon because it's losing its. It's not that it's going to lose viewers, it's that it's losing interest, in which that might be even more important, because if people don't think about you, if people aren't talking about you, then you really don't exist. More of your comments. Jeff Meacham says the few times that he worked with Eddie, he had him believing. I didn't know you worked with him, to be honest. I know you had a hand in some of those Wrestling Cares events, but I didn't know you had much outside of that, Jeff. Ron Gibson says, Jake the Snake smack talked Arn at the match signing sit down. Oh, I see. So I'm sorry, guys. I'm kind of jumping all over the place. I'm trying to remember if anyone ever talked to Arn that way. Arn was the guy that usually talked that way. Arn was the guy that would break your hand, right? I mean, remember what he did with Dusty? Pillman tried to talk to Arn's friend Kevin Sullivan that way, and Arn took care of that shit in a hurry. All right, Jeff. So let's see. If it's not the WWE Universe, it doesn't exist to him. Dave, you're probably right on that. And I mean, look, that's not necessarily a bad thing either, right? Because I don't know how many times I've talked to people who are working outside of what they're doing. Like, well, to be more specific, like, I remember asking people who were employed by the WWE, well, what they thought about NWA Power. And the answer always was, I'm too busy focusing on what I'm doing to really focus on what anyone else is doing. And if it's not your place to know the competition, then I totally get that. What did you think about the face slap, though, from Aldis? It was odd, almost like it showed the anger and how Aldis had let it get to his head a little too much. See, Ron, here's the thing. You have someone who's very much concerned about their legacy. Nick Aldis, I mean, but the NWA recently did a podcast, a show on Carneyland inside the NWA, where they talked about the Mount Rushmore. Now, Nick Aldis wants to be spoken about in the same way that we talk about Ric Flair and Harley Race. I mean, that's kind of everyone's goal as NWA World Champion, is to cement their legacy with the legends that came before them. I love Nick Aldis. I think he's doing a tremendous job as World Champion. I don't put Nick Aldis above Adam Pearce, not yet. That might get me some heat from the boys. I don't care. It's just, no one's coming on my podcast anyway, so who cares, right? But legitimately, Aldis has done quite a bit, but he's also done it backed by Billy Corgan in the NWA. When Adam Pearce was touring the world, Adam Pearce did it on his own. To get those matches in WXW, it wasn't the NWA. To get the title in Australia, it wasn't Tommy Dreamer and House of Hardcore. I mean, it was Adam Pearce. I don't take anything away from Nick Aldis, and I know he's hungry and he's looking to prove himself. Yeah, he is, and he has been proving himself. He has single-handedly gotten people to talk about the NWA again. And I'm sorry, because I do love Jack Stane and Tim Storm, and I like Hiroshi Tenzin, and I like Satoshi Kojima, and Tokyo Monster Kahagas, and Rob Conway, but not one of those guys was able to gather the same interests that Nick Aldis has, like Adam Pearce. So, what does that mean going forward? Well, I mean, look, when you talk about Nick Aldis and what he has done to kind of cement that legacy, I mean, think about it this way, right? What other wrestler do you know of right now that companies want to use his likeness for action figures, and they want to use his likeness for video games, all the while not even having wrestled in like 5 months. Go ahead, I'll wait. Nick Aldis is doing something pretty remarkable, and being able to take that title to China and to be able to take that title to Australia and the UK. I mean, these things aren't easy. And I hear a lot of people say, well, of course he's taking the title to the UK because he's British. But bros, he lives in the United States. He lives here. It's not like he has all these connections in the UK. I mean, only based on his previous experience. And he was able to get booked in the UK, I think, what, like 14 times in about a 2-month period? That hasn't been a feat that anybody's been able to do. And I mean, the last couple of world champions to take the title to the UK were, Adam Pearce and Blue Demon Jr. And before that, I mean, it goes back to Impact. So to have that much of a standing in the United Kingdom, I think is huge. And hopefully we'll see more of that as things start to become normal again. But how does he cement his legacy? What are your guys' thoughts? I'm going to read some more of your comments. Let's see. You guys are still talking about Bruce Pritchard. Yeah. And the thing, I think Bruce is just really misinformed. And it's a shame. Because somebody like Nick Aldis, I think, should have that cachet at this point in his career, that people should be seeking out what he's doing. And I really think it's really incredible to what he's done with what he has and what he's continuing to do and what he will continue to do. Jeff, I forgot you did stuff with Epic. So, I mean, that's the question I pose to everyone who's watching right now. What does Nick Aldis have to do to cement his legacy? Like, what would make you put him on the same pedestal with Ric Flair and Harley Race and Sting and Ricky Steamboat and Jack Briscoe, Gene Kiniski, Lou Thesz? I mean, what does he generally have to do to become that guy? What makes him surpass Adam Pearce? Or maybe you already think he has. Tell me. Post something. Let me read it. Leave a comment and I'll get back to you privately. But I've always wondered that, because you've got a guy who legitimately has taken that title to a continent that, one, barely even has professional wrestling, and two, has never seen the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship before. And that's pretty impressive, man. That's really, really awesome. All Japan Stan says the first he has to give that belt up and chase it. I will say this. There was something to be said about that chase with Tim Storm and Nick Aldis, and later the chase between Nick Aldis and Cody Rhodes. There wasn't enough time, I think, to build Cody versus Nick too. They knew that All Elite Wrestling was coming. They knew that window of opportunity was closing. So Nick did what he could. The NWA did what they could to make that match meaningful. And I'll 100%. That match was incredible. It was a great match. The 2 out of 3 falls in Nashville was a great match. But it doesn't cement his legacy. And now, if that feud with him and Cody were to continue, I think that would be exceptional. But while Cody's under contract with AEW, and we know that the NWA is open for business, it just doesn't seem likely. But you never know. Willie says, as long as Nick Aldis wrestles the top contenders around the world, yeah. And that's the thing too. I mean, top contenders around the world. Who are the top contenders? And what do you mean by around the world? If he wrestles in All Japan Pro Wrestling versus New Japan Pro Wrestling, is that better or worse? If he's able to get on a Pro Wrestling Noah show. Does that count? If he's facing the top challenges from Pro Wrestling Noah, does that lend credibility to his cause? Lamb says for Nick Aldis, he needs big matches to let people everywhere talk about. To be honest, since winning the title back from Cody, something is missing. The title matches he had just weren't big enough. And there's a lot to that as well. And the thing about it is, too, like, so when Nick wins the title back, right? And then we start talking about what's next for the NWA. There was the Crockett Cup, and it was the big match, Marty versus Nick. And people were excited about that. That was a big deal. But then somewhere around the way, we got NWA Power, and there was a less focus on those 10 pounds of gold, those big matches. And then in NWA Power, we really didn't get to see the Nick Aldis that we grew to love from the 10 pounds of gold. And we got flashes of that. The match that he had with Tim Storm was pretty damn good. The match he had with Trevor Murdoch was great. I really enjoyed that match. The match he had with Ricky Starks was really, really good. I'm not a big fan of Ricky Morton or Robert Gibson, so I wasn't too thrilled with those matches. But, some of these big matches that he was supposed to have got canceled. I mean, he was supposed to go to, I want to say Jamaica, and I know that's not right, Puerto Rico. He wanted to go to Puerto Rico to face Carlito Caribbean Cool, and I know he's not the same name he was when he worked at the WWE, but there's still value in that guy. He still draws. He's still the top star in Puerto Rico. That would have been a great match for Nick Aldis to have. I do believe he was supposed to go to South America. The matches that were supposed to happen at the wrestling conventions in April, that got postponed. I think it was WrestleCon. So, I mean, there were supposed to be some big matches that were outside of the NWA's jurisdiction, but none of that was able to come to fruition because of, well, where we're currently at right now. And let's not forget, he was able to take the title to Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. He was able to take the title, I guess he hasn't really defended that title in Tried and True Pro Wrestling, but maybe he should going forward. Let's see, more of your comments. Jeff Meacham says, from my perspective, Nick is there. He's most definitely the greatest champion since Pierce. He's like right there. Just don't know what would have him surpass the Scrap Daddy. And I just love Adam. I mean, look, I'm a huge Adam Pierce fan. You guys know that. I don't make any secrets about it. And like I said, Adam Pierce, it took 3 runs for Adam Pierce to get really in that groove, that real solid groove. And once he was there, it was unbelievable. It just unbelievable. One of the best guys that you could have in that position. We've talked about it. I mean, it could have been Brent Albright. It should have been Daniel Bryan, but it was Adam Pierce. And what he was able to do in those 3 runs, by run 3, he was really at another level. And I know Nick Aldis is at another level, but I don't think he's up there with Pierce yet. But, I mean, like I said, he's still young and still has time. I mean, we're talking about 600 days as champion. I mean, 600 plus at this point, but you get my drift. That's a long time. Wrestling with MMA is taking off. Thanks for hanging out. Sorry the show wasn't as nice as it normally is. Come back next week. We'll have an improved look and feel. Lamb says his match against Marty Scurll at Crockett Cup 2019 was his only big pay-per-view match for the title. His 3 matches against Tim Storm were great. The TV kickoff, but nothing more. It's hard to argue with you, Lamb. Those are some very accurate points. I mean, they're salient. How can you argue that? Dave Scooby says, I think he and the NWA need to find new challengers and make them more main event players. Right now, Nick is at the top with no real serious challengers at this time. That's a good point, Dave. And Terry says, NWA not doing anything is Nick's holdback at the moment. Absolutely. I mean, you're 100% right, Terry. 100%. Now, my unfiltered take is that if Nick Aldis and the NWA are serious about cementing legacy, then right now, today, we need to start talking Eddie Kingston versus Nick Aldis. We might never get Marty Scurll versus Nick Aldis again. And you know what? I'm okay with that. I think the match the NWA needs to make right now is Eddie Kingston. Eddie Kingston's cutting promos out there, building hype for a match that isn't even signed yet. He's not even under contract to the NWA. This match might not ever happen. Oh, but if it does, guys, woo, if it does, the promos alone will sell the tickets. I don't care what you put on the undercard. Eddie Kingston, Nick Aldis, somebody's going to lose an eye. Someone's get their head cut off. It's going to get intense. And you know Eddie Kingston's going to bring the passion. You know Nick Aldis is going to bring the passion. That's the match, guys. That's the match right now that the NWA needs to make. And you know, the looking beyond Nick Aldis, I think, is a mistake. But there are guys out there who are totally capable of carrying that title on the brand. You know, we'll start the short list. Eli Drake, James Storm. But you start breaking that list further and further down. I mean, Trevor Murdoch is NWA World Champion. Would anybody have a problem with that? Not me. Ron Gibson says, I like the legacy making in the old days. Tough. Guys took the gold and performed on the road all the time. Aldis is grooming a legacy, creating moments. Still great, just a little less exciting for me. I think you're right, Ron. I think you're right, because when you talk about the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship, what forged that legacy is those 300 days on the road, right? When Ric Flair would wrestle twice in Charlotte, once at the Omni, wrestle at the Omni and then wrestle later that night in Charlotte, or whatever it is he was doing. I mean, being able to get 2 defenses in one day. I mean, we have to understand, since the territory days have died, right? And there's only really 1, maybe 2 promotions. Let's face it, one wrestling promotion before COVID-19 was really touring the country legitimately. We're talking about the WWE. And its talents were wrestling 300 days a year, 280 days a year. Whatever it was extensive. Ric Flair kept that kind of a schedule back in the late 70s, early 80s. Nobody in the NWA has had that kind of a schedule since. And not even the days when Impact was associated with the NWA World's Heavyweight title, where guys working 4 or 5 days a week. It just wasn't happening. So, if we were to see Nick Aldis get an uptick in defenses, yeah, that will help solidify. He needs to be traveling the world defending that title. Part of what made 10 pounds of gold so great was it wasn't just about the man carrying the title, it was the legacy behind that title. And again, to move the NWA forward, you need to, number one, prioritize the 10 pounds of gold. Make that title meaningful, which means if I could watch it in Hollywood live, and you could watch it in Seattle live, and you can watch it in Atlanta live, and you could watch it in Greensville or Charlotte or, Glassboro or Dallas or Austin or wherever. If the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship is traveling, then it's alive and well. And NWA Power can be used to promote the rest of the show, the rest of the roster. And of course, all this leads to pay-per-views and arena shows. But that's just how the slow build, that's how it goes. Willie Bowen, who is echoing All Japan Stan's comments, Nick Aldis should go to All Japan Pro Wrestling and he should wrestle Kento Miyahara. Well, if that match happens, I guarantee you the Alliance Wrestling will be there, because Stan the Man will be there representing the Alliance. I know that full well. Terry McDermott says Eddie versus Nick will be Rocky versus Apollo. That's a great analogy. That is so good. And even if Eddie Kingston doesn't win by drawing the champion, that helps cement Eddie Kingston's legacy. AWF Viral Trevor's certainly worthy. AWF Viral, I don't think you've been here before. Welcome to the show, man. This is the pre-party where every week we talk about the National Wrestling Alliance. We call it hashtag TalkNWA. I've been doing this for about 13 years, so I'm glad you're here with us. And we do it every Tuesday, 5 o'clock Eastern, 2 o'clock Pacific. And usually the setup's a little bit sharper looking, but we had some tech issues today. But I do appreciate you being here. And then Dr. Robert Stinson says, thank you, Dr. Robert, number one, for being here. Number two, he agrees that Aldis and Kingston would be an emotional prize fight on another level, and this has all the making for an historic feud. Absolutely, historic, right? And again, we were mentioning the Rocky Balboa, right? The prize fight, Rocky versus, I almost said, Apollo. God, I totally drew a brain fart right there. Rocky versus Apollo. That's what the 10 pounds of gold was for. And the promos, oh God, the promos would be excellent. And this is the way that they need to go. Billy Corgan, if you're listening, Maureen, Nick, anybody who's associated with the NWA, if you're hearing this, this is what the fans want. Authenticity. There's no one more authentic than Eddie Kingston. Second runner-up, Nick Aldis. Let's make it happen. That's the match that's going to bring fans back to the NWA, guaranteed. So today, of all days, what is today? Today is July 28th. July 28th is my friend of the show, executive producer for Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, the voice, well, maybe not the voice, the MC, the master of ceremonies for NWA Power. Today is David Marquez's birthday. I've known David Marquez for close to 20 years. And in 20 years' time, David Marquez has always shown kindness. David Marquez has always shown kindness to the IPPV. He's always been transparent. He's made himself available. Next to Adam Pearce, I probably have interviewed David Marquez more than any other wrestling personality over the last 14 years. He's always made talent available to me. Again, he allowed me to accompany the Championship Wrestling from Hollywood group that went to China. Has always given me backstage access, going back to the Coupe de Lucha in the Orleans Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. So, as you guys know, I hold Dave Marquez in the highest of esteem. When he says, by the way, happy birthday, Dave. When David Marquez says that he has a big wrestling announcement coming soon, ladies and gentlemen, I implore you to pay attention. David Marquez doesn't do a lot of hyperbole. Did I say that right? Hyperbole. There we go. David Marquez doesn't blow smoke up you know where. David Marquez is a pretty much straight shooter. He's not going to tell you what the ratings are for his show. He keeps that to himself. He's happy with the numbers. He's not going to give out that information. It's not publicly needed information. But when Dave Marquez says that there's a big project coming, wrestling related, that he can't wait to announce, that's going to be huge, rest assured, this is going to be big. And maybe your friend Jay Cal knows a little bit more than he can talk about at this time. But I would say stay tuned to Twitter, stay tuned to Instagram, stay tuned to Facebook for those groups of Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, Championship Wrestling from Arizona, David Marquez, the United Wrestling Network, Silver State Wrestling, whatever outlet that you happen to follow, stay tuned because there's something big coming. And I don't know how many boxes it'll check off for you, but I think that we're all going to be very excited about what he's going to have to say. More of your comments. Stan says, hell no, Kento ain't doing no job to Aldis, and Aldis won't job either. Well, then maybe, Stan, maybe that's okay. Maybe he doesn't have to win that match. Maybe he doesn't have to lose that match. Maybe that match goes Broadway. It goes 60 minutes, a time limit draw. Would that hurt Nick Aldis to lose to Kento Miyahara? Would it hurt, not lose, but not be able to pin Kento Miyahara? Would it hurt Kento Miyahara to not be able to pin Nick Aldis? I think that helps establish two guys as really, really good. Maybe I'm wrong. Lamb says Nick Aldis can face Yoshi Tatsu from All Japan because nobody would job for Aldis. Hey, maybe, man. And look, the stakes have to be right. It has to make sense. It has to make sense for all parties involved, whether it be New Japan, All Japan, Pro Wrestling Noah, 0-1, whatever it is. The stakes have to make sense. And that's, I always tell people who are like, well, why don't they bring back the territory system? Well, they don't bring back the territory system because we're in a day and age where the territory system doesn't work. Because Billy Corgan isn't going to give out ownership. He's not going to trade his equity for support. He 100% owns the NWA, and anyone else who puts the NWA over does so more or less at the expense of their own organization. If you bring Nick Aldis into your territory and put him in the ring with your heavyweight champion, you're the top guy on your show, how is that going to benefit your guy unless it's a draw? The territory systems were always kind of flawed, but the minute that the NWA became a single entity, it killed it. Now they're working relationships. Tried and True Pro Wrestling has ties to the NWA. Championship Wrestling from Hollywood has ties to the NWA. These are places where you want to put the NWA World Champion to work. But that doesn't mean you can't showcase that champion on other cards. The NWA podcast, This is the NWA podcast, recently talked about the 7 levels of hate. And that formula can really be put anywhere. It can be put in play anywhere. Whether it be, American League Wrestling or Pro Wrestling Guerrilla or, Ring of Honor, Southwest Entertainment, whatever that is, Southern Wrestling Entertainment. Sorry guys, I don't mean to butcher your name, I just don't know it, I'm not that familiar. Mission Pro, that can be used in so many different areas, so why not take that opportunity? Because if you have, let's say, Nick Aldis versus Eddie Kingston on a show, would that not draw you to watch it? Would that not draw your interest to be a part of that? If it was happening outside of the NWA, would that prevent you from wanting to see it? Not me. If the 10 pounds of gold is on the line, I want to be there. And if I can't be there, I want to order the iPay-per-view. And if they don't have it on iPay-per-view, then I can't wait to watch it on YouTube or whatever streaming service that match happens to be on. Len said, let's get some iPay-per-views again. 100%. 100%. Willie Bowen says, NWA Power has a lot of surprises for us. Billy Corgan is keeping quiet about it. Really, I think Billy is really trying to formulate how they're going to move forward. And I'm not afraid to say that I think David Lagana did so much and spun so many plates for the organization that he's a hard person to replace. Rick says, Kingston would launch into he's from the streets, and Aldis will say, I'm from the streets too, but Kingston would say, I'm still a step away from the streets, partner, and so on. I mean, yeah, look, there's just a totally different dynamic there, and there's nothing that our World's Heavyweight Championship can say to get credibility from Eddie Kingston. He'd have to just prove it in the ring. Lamb says David Marquez is the best, gave me a lot of advice and a chance to write about his shows. Great man. I will forever speak the praises of David Marquez because he's always been fair to me. Sometimes I've stepped out of lines and he's told me, hey, that wasn't cool. Other times he's helped promote what we're doing here. And like I said, him being on the shows, offering that transparency, making his talent available, allowing me access. Um, it's all been very appreciated. And Dave is a great dude. If you guys ever get a chance to meet him, you know, he's a good dude. Oh, I like that, Scooby. You should put that out to Aldis, because that is a great idea for a t-shirt. Dave Scooby says the new Nick Aldis t-shirt, or even tagline, receipt or invoice, it's your choice. That's right, because he ate up Bruce Pritchard. Ate him up. Uh, Len says double DQ, so neither lose. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a safe way to go, depending on who it is. And again, if we're building up, if we're building to a pay-per-view, if we're talking about Eddie Kingston and Nick Aldis specifically, then I really think a slow feud. Let's keep people like wanting that match. Save it for the pay-per-view if you have to, if you can. If you can't, that's the match that should bring people back to power. Willie Bones says David Marquez should be the replacement for Dave Lagana. See, and that's the thing too. Marquez isn't interested in that. Marquez has his own thing, you know. But let's just we're friends here, so let me just tell you a little bit of what David Marquez is doing in terms of professional wrestling, because he also has a job directing. Like he's in Vegas right now directing a basketball tournament for Fight TV. He also does, I don't know if he does it still, but for a long time he was doing directing shows in Southern California. KDOC's, I can't remember what the show was called, but basically stuff in Southern California. Also producing news segments on occasion. But let's get to the meat and potatoes, the pro wrestling, right? So Championship Wrestling from Hollywood is obviously David Marquez's baby. He's been doing that now for close to 14 years. There's been a lot of effort, energy. Maybe 14 years is, maybe 10 years, maybe 11 years. Okay, Championship Wrestling from Hollywood for 11 years. Really, even before that, because, you know, before Hollywood, there was NWA Pro Wrestling Showcase and the NWA Showcase. And then also the New Japan USA stuff he was doing back in 2002, 2001, 2003. I'm not sure. Time gets away from me. But what is he doing today? So he's got Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. He has Championship Wrestling from Arizona. The plan was to do something in Las Vegas, Nevada, Silver State Wrestling. There's also the... I don't exactly know what to call it, but they take essentially what's Championship Wrestling from Hollywood and give it a local feel to certain markets like Amarillo, Texas, Memphis, Tennessee, San Francisco, California, and I believe there's another city in Texas they do that for. So in essence, it's kind of like almost a different program. The wrestling's the same, but the hosts are different. And he does that in 4 major markets. Then when we talk about those projects, and then he's also producing shows. My daughter's looking at me. What is it, Claire? We'll talk later. Give me a few more minutes. Okay. Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, Silver States Wrestling. We have all these promotions going on. And then we also have, besides all that, we also have New Japan Pro Wrestling that's taking place in the Ocean View Pavilion. He's taping that show. He's producing that show for New Japan with really a lot of critical acclaim so far. A lot of people seem to be into that show. So, I mean, right there, we're talking about 3 different properties, and one of those properties is actually like 4 different markets, as well as the Hollywood show is syndicated nationally as well. So there's a lot going on. I don't think Dave Marquez has time to focus on just the NWA. If they would have came to Dave Marquez, 2 years ago, things would have been different. But now, it's not like he really has that opportunity. But he's still part of the production team for the NWA. Billy Trask is the director. He's a protege of Dave Marquez. He literally directs the show for NWA Power, so he's still around. But taking care of the day-to-day operations, you know, Dave Logano was literally doing the job of 3 to 4 people, literally. Dave Marquez is still one guy, and he's got interests elsewhere, so it's kind of hard. More of your comments. Nick Aldis versus Warhorse at St. Louis Anarchy, so we can compare Cody's performance versus him at AEW and Nick on the indie circuit. Absolutely. There it is. Book it. Make it happen, Ron. Make it happen. Let's see. More of your comments. Dave Scooby says, sent it to Marine already. Hope they can use it. There it is. There it is. Lamb says, also Championship Wrestling from Memphis soon. Yeah, and that's something we don't talk about often enough, but the spinoff from what they were doing in the CW30 was always originally planned to be its own show. It was always planned to be its own deal. It was always supposed to be its own thing. So the fact that it hadn't been, I mean, that was supposed to change this year, but of course, we're dealing with a global pandemic. It just didn't happen. And Craig says he also managed the United Wrestling Network. Of course. Of course. So, guys, that's going to wrap things up for this week. I do appreciate you guys being here. I'm really excited about next week. Things will be a lot better looking over here. I'm really, really geeked, and I really hope you guys will be back next week to check out the new rig, the new gear. God, I hope FedEx delivers it on time. Please do me a favor. If you're on Facebook, go search NWA Unfiltered. Give that page a like. Terry and the guys over at NWA Unfiltered really have tried to make a community for like-minded NWA fans to make it fun and exciting. I definitely like checking it out. Also, if you guys are on Instagram, I lost my train of thought. You can follow us at TheAllianceBlog on Instagram. We're also on TikTok. We're also on Twitter at TheAllianceBlog. If this is the first time you guys checked out the show, please give us a thumbs up if you like it. Share it on your social media. We'd appreciate that. We have a lot more content coming soon. The aforementioned Thunder Rosa interview should be out this week, God willing. We're also working on a retrospective piece on the Junior Heavyweight Championship, as well as a lot more content coming soon. And really, we do this for you guys. It's fun for me to talk wrestling, but I do this because we're trying to fill that void until Billy says NWA Power is back. So make sure you're checking that out. Also, we're going to have some new t-shirts available very, very soon. We're working on designs right now. I've got 2 of them probably going to drop before the end of, or probably the first week of August, maybe second week. So look forward to seeing those things. And please visit my friends tonight. This is the NWA podcast. Gary Horn, Dr. Robert Stinson, Will Martin. Love those dudes. We're all like-minded guys, and they put on a great show. So I hope you guys will check it out. But until next time, be safe. Wash your hands, wear a mask, and I'll see you at the matches. Y'all have a good time. We'll see you next week.